Sarah.
That's possibly true. That's possibly true. All right. Oh. Let me do that real quick. Hold on. Let's see. Although we're live on the internet, add song.
Just sit on the front row this morning.
I need it.
Okay. All right. Got it in there, Hunter. Yeah. So now it's in there like 2 songs, so you can go from one to the other song. Hunter told me if I didn't do that, he's gonna break my fingers. So.
Yeah, she said she wouldn't get it.
Talk back to Nancy one too many times.
Nancy gave me the old right cross.
You think it would have closed up this hole, you know?
Yeah,
They don't close up that hole.
Somebody got your eye.
You see,
Oh,
Tara,
okay.
that's why we don't like dentists.
Wow, they messed him up.
Probably have assistant punched him.
Back talk to the sister, she'll get you.
You know, Deb hit me one time.
You need to-
One time.
That's
right.
28 years. We were at the Waffle House, nicely and politely eating.
Where's she at?
And she was eating a waffle, if I remember correctly. And she had a piece of bacon on her plate. And so I figured, well, she's finished with
It's
that.
not ladylike to finish your
And
food.
so I just took a bite of her bacon. Boy, I tell you, yeah. And everybody in that Waffle House turned around and looked. I just went,
I'll
whoa.
have to say you deserve to take her back.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Well, what it was explained to me was, I like the taste, the bitter taste of the bacon after I eat my sweet.
I can explain that. I can understand that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You should have ordered your own bacon.
Exactly.
You should have ordered your own bacon.
I did, but it's already gone. And I would have wasted, my mama was a depression baby, we waste not, want not.
There you go. No, I'm with that. That's very funny. I wish I could say that Tara only hit me one time, but it's obviously far more than that. Not quite enough, but obviously far more than
I
that.
hit you one time good, and that was just the pole in the eye.
Yeah.
That's really all it takes.
Straighten you up though,
It
didn't
was
it?
under the house, yeah.
Yeah.
Me and Lisa's got a.
Tensions were already high.
What's
Because
your
our
Well, it's
agreement?
more not an agreement, it's more of a rule. I can hit her on 2 reasons. If she's trying to kill me, or she brings home another dog.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is funny. Yeah. You bring home another
It's really
dog.
high 'cause
You
you'd
got
already
a dog.
built some two before off the top of my head. We're building a shop.
Accident.
We
Me
were
and Casey
both-
were play fighting
before
one
off the
time,
top of
and
my
I
head.
slapped him, and I went to slap him again on the arm, and he caught my arm right here, and I had a big old handprint right here on my arm, and he never hit me again.
Yes, I told them about your brutality. at the Waffle House that time.
Deb, we all know now. So nobody's gonna eat your bacon. I'll tell you that much. Yeah, you're safe with that. That's pretty funny.
Yep.
Making a mess of there, Scott.
Clean it up.
I see. Making a big mess of you want. That's awesome.
Well, let's put it this way, I never touched bacon again.
Without question.
Yeah.
I believe we're going to be on page 108. I think my notes say 106. But as we're getting suited up here for today, did I say 108? I think it's 108. I didn't update that
Where
part.
we left off.
Yeah, 108. Yeah, let's not go back. Let's at least try to push forward. You know,
Did the books get moved? Or chairs?
maybe,
Chairs?
maybe, yes. I think I saw a big pile of them over there. So if you can't find yours, There's some in the back.
One right there.
You can use my, yeah, there's one over there.
Let's show him. That's
You
nice.
can use this one if you need to. If you make good notes in
Get
it.
it the right way.
Chrissy just keeps drawing little stick men. She's drawing hangmen. How long is this class? No, I'm just kidding.
You say men, don't you?
Was it right underneath it? Come on, Tracy, step it up now.
OMG.
Like Richard
If her
Garner.
she is in a short dress and she can't bend over all the way.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
You come on, Scott. Come on. It's funny how well I feel like I know Scott and Tracy. We really haven't spent that much time together, but I really feel like I know you guys. Like it's like I know them.
You know us.
Very funny, yeah. Very funny. I hear all y'all secrets. That's why. So,
A bunch of them.
there you go. I've heard them all. No. Very funny. So let's see. Quick disclaimer before we get started. The views today, I'm going to specifically point out, there's a lot of my own views in today's study. There's a lot of different ways you can go with a few different things, and just keep in mind that if your views are a little bit different than mine, especially it might be helpful to even say them out or whatever, and we'll discuss them and I'll show you how you're wrong. But no, just kidding.
I still say that means you're wrong, right?
That's right. The big announcement this week is this coming Saturday at 8:30. We're going to have our cleanup. That's exactly right. Nichols Road cleanup. Based on how many people we have, I do have another job that I found. I don't know if we have this, so it's going to require a fancy doodad, which I do not have. But if anybody has a cordless a pressure washer, that would be, don't raise your hand or else I'm going to make you come. No, I'm just kidding. But like if you have one of those, what we have is we have 2 signs at our church. And one sign's at the bottom of the hill, and the other sign's way out at 411 where Nichols Road hits. And those signs, I know you can't tell when you're driving by, but they are very bad shape. They probably haven't been cleaned in like 10 years, is my guess. There was a lizard.
Make a drop cord to the bottom of the hill.
If you got some kind of like 300-foot cord, and then you need a mile one to get to the other end of Nichols. Oh, Scott's got us. But
Getting water for a pressure washer.
I don't know.
I don't
Yeah,
know
that
how
would
we
be the
get water.
issue.
I don't know.
to clean it.
You gotta have water.
Yeah.
We can come up with some kind of
I
plan.
mean,
there.
I've got a little electric one that I've got a generator I could take,
But you still have to have the water.
but I don't have a source
Well,
for
I got a
water.
big gas powered one, but if you don't have water, you can't use it.
Well, we'll just have to connect a huge hose.
Anybody's got a 55-gallon drum, you fill it up on a trailer.
Well, it has to come out with pressure.
Yeah.
So we'll discuss that. I don't know. We may have to just wipe it down. I don't know. But it's another, if we have enough people, I'm saying, we can do that as well because,
Water's gotta
And
be
you can
clear.
just go buy that stuff at Home Depot that's like spray it and leave it, it's like $20, and all you have to do is rinse it.
Yeah.
We could totally get,
okay.
yeah, something
Well,
like that might really work.
It may be in worse shape than that though. That's all I'm throwing out there.
Rinsing it's a problem too, cause you know
Well, you
what,
could-
you gotta have water.
Well, but for that, you could seriously get like a huge storage container full of water and rinse it after you sprayed it on. I'm not kidding, it works.
We could get,
Okay.
we could get
Pressure
the
washers,
link
they
to,
don't have pressure on there, so it sucks it out.
We could get an electronic sign.
There you go.
It's a little bit more than what we're
About
talking about.
$5,000, but, yeah,
I would like that though. That's
we
good.
would
That's good.
love that.
it's
Yeah.
not
Are we
more
still
than
doing
that,
a cleanup
because
up for
you're
sure?
gonna have
The cleanups for sure.
Okay, I
Oh,
will
and
tell you
mean,
this,
it's a lot.
Chris, be quiet, I'm talking.
Back up and Scott, you do not want that to me. Throw that out.
I have all the trash bags in the world we need for that, so nobody needs to bring trash bags.
Okay. Okay. That's good.
You have all the trash bags.
I have about 60, maybe 80 of them. And
It's more than enough. Good more.
We
Very
could
good.
get Dwayne offered to illegally tap into the water line if I mean,
It's possible. We'll see. But that's a kind of secondary thing. If somebody wants to kind of,
I didn't hear that.
if somebody wants to head that up, feel free. Feel free to head that up, Dorsey.
Oh, no, I saw that look.
You just kind of look like you're frowning now. You're just kind of. Yes, I am. But that is secondary.
Big smile, big problem.
Yes.
Yes.
Just gotta. Okay. So, getting started here. Previously in John, we talked about Jesus on trial, God on trial, as it's labeled. Jesus faced Annas. he's struck as he disrespects Annas. The entire interrogation's this illegal, corrupt situation which we went into. Then he's taken to Caiaphas. After this, he's held in a dungeon for a few hours. Until then, he's taken before the Sanhedrin. And the whole company of them arose and brought him before Pilate, Luke tells us. And then last week, he was taken before Pilate himself. And we discussed the first half of that, going into it a little bit. And I want to talk a little bit about, some of the other little details we missed. One of the things I really like is the visual of him. We discussed how all 4 Gospels continually says he's bound. He's bound. They take him here. He's bound. They take him there. We talked about how sacrifice is bound. One interesting thing, though, is each time he gets to these people, they would unbind him, and he would then, for the court, for the system, he would be considered innocent, at first, Now, some people say that during Annas and Caiaphas, he was so guilty they didn't even unbind him. But, for me, they unbind him each time. Then they bind him again. They take him to the next place. It's typically a rope or something like that. He would have been 2 hands in front, pulled along. Could have been another one, like 2 hands and his neck pulled along from in front of him. So we get that visual as he's being taken through the courtyard of Annas and Caiaphas, and then he goes to the Sanhedrin. And then as Jesus is before Pilate, Pilate asks him these 5 questions, and we talked about those. And he says, one of the most important ones is, "Are you the King of the Jews?" And Jesus says, "You've said so." Jesus says that his purpose, that he was born, was to bear witness to the truth. Pilate jests, what is truth? Never really figuring out what he's never picking up what Jesus is laying down the whole time. He's never on the same page as what he's talking about. He's sarcastic. For me, almost every word that Pilate says in John, it can be taken in a sarcastic, demeaning kind of a way. You little, you Jews think that you're, worthy of taking up my time to some degree, He's sarcastic, he's dismissive of Jesus, having the capabilities of hurting Rome, of doing anything, really. He doesn't see Jesus as a king in a political sense, and thus can't endanger the empire. And because of that, he's done with him to some degree. Pilate goes back out to the Sanhedrin. We talked about how he's in the praetorium over here, and he continually comes in and out. They won't come into him so they don't defile themselves during the Passover. And he comes back out and he says, "I find no guilt in him." It's a line that he's going to say 3 times in total. And then, not surprisingly, John leaves out the next event. He has his own way of telling things, but I'm just going to give you a couple sentences on it, and we'll kind of read it a little bit. But Pilate asked the Sanhedrin if Jesus is a Galilean. And Luke tells us about this. And then he sends him to Herod. And we all know the story of Herod. They include it in all the movies, and it's always talked about in Sunday service. But we don't have that in John. He leaves out the whole trip over to Herod's temple. I wanted to kind of quickly read through that just to give us an idea of as the night goes on. And I try to concentrate just on John's account, but the Herod stuff's good, So it's found in Luke 23. I'll read just a hair before and a hair after, just to give you how we fit it into John here. Then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowds, "I find no guilt in this man." But they were urgent, saying, "He stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea, from Galilee even to this place." When Pilate heard this, he asked whether the man was a Galilean. And when he learned that he belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him over to Herod, who was himself in Jerusalem at that time. Of course, for the feast, they're all there. We already talked about that. When Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad, for he had long desired to see him, because he had heard about him, and he was hoping to see some sign done by him. So he questioned him at some length, but he made no answer. The chief priests and the scribes stood by, vehemently accusing him. And Herod, with his soldiers, treated him with contempt and mocked him. Then, arraying him in splendid clothing, he sent him back to Pilate. And Herod and Pilate became friends with each other that very day. For before this, they had been at enmity with each other. Pilate then called together the chief priests and the rulers in the temple and the people, and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was misleading the people. And after examining him before you, behold, I do not find this man guilty of any of your charges against him. Neither did Herod, for he sent him back to us. Look, nothing deserving death has been done by him. I will therefore punish and release him." But they all cried out together, "Away with this man, and release to us Barabbas, a man who had been thrown into prison for an insurrection started in the city and for murder." I just feel like that's a big part that John leaves out there. You know, for me, it is this Pilate trying to put it off on somebody else. You know, he finds nothing wrong with what he's doing. He wants someone else to take this. He over and over will tell the chief priests and the officers, "Hey, you guys go. You want to crucify him? Go crucify him." You know, and he's continually pushing him away. Not only because he's not important, but he also doesn't see the problem to some degree. So back in John now. We talked about Barabbas a little bit. We talked about how he's an insurrectionist. In the CSB, they translate that word revolutionary. But Luke tells us that he was a murderer. And the last verse of John 18 calls him a robber in the ESV. That's a pretty neat word, the lestes. It kind of means, the NRSV translates it's bandit. That's a pretty good one for me. Another one which doesn't translate for us is a highwayman. We learned about it in the Good Samaritan, where the Good Samaritan's going down the road and there's the highwaymen who would wait on the side of the road, and if you came down through there by yourself or unprotected, they would come out, and they were bandits. They would steal your stuff. Pirates, you could even call them to some degree. But they'd come out and they'd steal your stuff as you traveled along. So a highwayman is another word they used back then. But you know, John uses that same word 3 times. Jesus actually says it when he says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs in another way, that man is a thief and a robber," a lestis. And so it's a little different than just a thief. There's I always like to point out there's the big difference in burglars and robbers. You know, depends on if somebody's home or not. You know, it's a big difference there. Anyway, you guys can look that one up. But Jesus takes his place, and then Jesus dies on the very cross that was prepared for Barabbas, and we kind of talked about what that means. And I love to think when Jesus is up there, those are Barabbas's guys. You know, those are his fellow highwaymen, or whatever you want to call them, his fellow bandits. And so this area now where they're out in front of the praetorium. They're out in this area called the outer colonnade, and that is that's a pretty important area, which we'll talk about when we get to 1913, I think. But it's this large courtyard area, and the Jewish leaders are standing there so they don't defile themselves. And each time Pilate comes out to talk to them, he brings out his chair with him, the bema seat. And there's this large crowd. They're shouting. They're somewhat out of control. I don't think there's any violence or anything like that, but it is an intense situation. It's not a very typical situation for the Passover. But for whatever reason, Pilate is constantly unsure of what to do. And John tells us that. All the Gospels tell us that. And Pilate says, "I find no guilt in him," meaning he's innocent, release him. And honestly, if Pilate had any kind of if he had any strength to what he was saying, Jesus would have been let go. But the Jewish leaders there, they nonstop. They're all over him. They don't accept it. They even threaten him. We haven't got to this part, but I feel like it's important to read this part ahead, so that as we come into it, we'll be ready for it. In 1912, it says, "From then on, Pilate sought to release him, but the Jews cried out, 'If you release this man, you are not Caesar's friend. Everyone who makes himself a king opposes Caesar.'" So he's being threatened. And to say that that hasn't already been brought up, it's for sure already been brought up. They've been using that against him the whole time. You're no friend of Caesar's, you know. He's battling the Jews over this. He sarcastically includes the king of the Jews when he talks about Jesus to them. In 1839 there he says, "But you have a custom that I should release one man for you at the Passover. So do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews?" Again, using that title, giving it to Jesus, just that alone would be disgusting to them. I love the Old Testament way of they're tearing their clothes over that, you know. You call him the king of the Jews again? What are you doing, you know? Running out of shirts. Anyway, but he's antagonizing them. He's coming at them a little bit. They specifically denied this title being given to Jesus. Oh, well, you're saying that again, you know? It's just over and over. That's the only way he refers to Jesus, to them. And then the crowd, led and directed by the Jewish authorities, choose to free Barabbas. The chief priests, who normally had nothing to do with robbers or bandits or murderers. And then they and the crowds are calling for the release of a man who has committed murder, who actually has committed murder in his fight against Rome, and they're condemning an innocent man, falsely accused of being a danger to Rome. So that's the atmosphere as we come into today's text there in 19:1. We'll have a quick prayer and then we'll get started. Dear Lord, we ask that you open our minds this morning as we study your word. We ask that you reveal yourself to us. Help us to understand. Challenge us and change us. And it's in your name we pray. Amen. All right, so Jesus is sentenced is a good header here. Jesus delivered to be crucified is the ESV. We're just going to read those first 5 verses because I don't think I'm going to get through that, but we'll see. If we do, it's awesome. But anyway, the first 5 verses, there's so much going on here. Then Pilate took Jesus and flogged him. And the soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head and arrayed him in a purple robe. They came up to him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews," and struck him with their hands. Pilate went out again and said to them, "See, I am bringing him out to you, that you may know that I find no guilt in him." So Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Pilate said to them, "Behold the man." Okay. All kinds of stuff here.
So Pilate's actually making fun of him, I think.
He's making fun of
He's
him.
just
100%.
making a joke out of it.
Yes, this is a joke for him.
Yeah.
I agree. Not just was the interrogation joke, he's continuing the joke
Right.
here out in this public display. 100%.
And it's totally political between the Jews, the Pharisees, and Jesus. What they're
Oh,
doing
yes.
to Jesus.
Absolutely, yeah.
Totally political.
For me, when I read this section, first off, it kind of hurts my stomach, Like, I feel like anytime we read through chapter 19, it's so strong, it's got so much drama going on. It's like, I don't know, more than your best friend is what it should be. Like they are hurting you in a sense. That's the way I hope that it relates to you. It's crazy for me when it first starts right there in 19:1 that it says Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. Because I'm like, no, hold on, didn't he just say he was innocent like 3 or 4 times? Like, why is he taking him and doing this? And for me, Pilate's actually trying to set him free. That's his goal here. Pilate orders a flogging, which he thinks will meet the Jews' demands, and Jesus will be punished and released. That's the intention here. Well, if you're not going to be satisfied, how about I just do this, and then we'll call it a day, But he hasn't done anything to deserve death. So I'll punish him, and then I'll release him. That's my own thoughts. You can look at it however you want to. But therefore, I'll punish him and release him. The words here don't do justice, I feel, to how shockingly offensive some of these things are. Chapter 19 is a horror story. Different parts of the Bible are read in different ways, but this part is supposed to be very good. It's like Mark 14, very graphic, very violent scene going on here. And a lot of it doesn't convey to us sometimes, because we don't really understand the words. But this picture that he's painting is a graphic, shocking, dramatic scene that I hope that we feel before we leave here this morning. A little bit of Roman punishment, just for fun. No, I'm just kidding. But flogging itself, it's administered by the Romans in 3 different forms. There are 3 main words that they use. I can't pronounce any of them, but I'm going to point to them. Fustigatio, okay? Fustigatio, the level 1 is what we're going to call that. It's a less severe beating. It's for light offenses, such as being a hooligan, or often accompanied with a severe warning, It's as low of a beating as you can get. It's public. It's still out in front of everyone to make an example out of you. But it's not the one that you're thinking of. How about that? Level 2 is flagellatio. I don't know how to say any of these words. I apologize. That's why I wrote them on the board. You can write them down. It's this brutal flogging for criminals whose offenses were more serious. It would be, there would be lashes and deep cuts on the body. It could mark you for the rest of your life. There are different stories and accounts where people not died from this, but couldn't walk anymore from this. Your bones would have been broke. All kinds of different things could have happened. Yes, absolutely. You know, the times here are very violent compared to what we know now, you know. So just keep that in mind. This is a barbaric scene. This whole chapter is very, I don't like the word primal, but it is very, it's hardcore. How about that? That's a good 2022 word there. But, and then we got the third level.
Crime rate was low though.
Yeah, all right. You only did things once. You only stole one time because you didn't have a hand anymore. Yeah. So, verberatio. I don't know. But third level, this is the one. This is the most terrible scourging of all. This is the one we all think of. And it's always associated with these other punishments, including crucifixion. When you get this, it is unbelievably bad. You would have been stripped. You would have been naked, tied to a short post, chained to the post even. You're not getting away from this. You'd have been beaten by several torturers. In the Roman areas, it would have been soldiers. So it would have been these big, strong, military men. And they just went till they were exhausted most of the time. There's different types of punishment that Paul gets, the 39 and 1 and all that kind of stuff. This is not really what we're talking about here.
Would they have stripped the other ones, just like the one?
I don't think so. That's a good question, especially not for the first one.
It doesn't matter, but to me,
No,
they
it
just
does
take
for
it
me.
to an entire different level of.
It does, yes.
It was
Humiliation.
Humiliation.
Yes, it's humiliating.
And feeling just so unprotected anywhere.
No, that's right. That's right.
I don't know.
And I've said before, though, public nudity in the first century is much different than we look at it now. It would have been much more common.
It would have been very-
much more common. But
It would have been much
this would have been
more embarrassing.
yeah, this would have been.
Everybody walks around half naked now.
Yeah, well, that's kind of true too. That's true. But yeah, this would have been very, very embarrassing, humiliating, just unbelievable. To put you down as low as you can get. But the third level, 100%, you're naked. But for victims like Jesus, who were not Roman citizens or soldiers, that would have been a lot. The third one, the last thing I want to say real quick was you go to their exhausted or until the commanding officer calls them off. And I don't know who all's seen The Passion, but man, in The Passion, that scene is hardcore. Like it is, I think it's almost rated X. I mean, it's like about as graphic as you can get. The most common in the first century, the favorite instrument was this whip that had these leather tongs on it, and it would have been fitted with pieces of bone or scraps of metal and sharp spikes and stuff, and they would have taken it, and as they whipped it, it also pulls, and so like it would have been pulling your skin off, removing just anything that it touched to some degree. The beatings were so savage that the victims sometimes died. Eyewitness records report that such brutal scourgings could leave victims with their bones and their entrails exposed. And I will say I had to look up entrails just to be sure what it meant. But it is everything it's supposed to be on the inside, like your intestines, your organs. All of these things could have been left exposed. And a common word that we use for that is scourged. Here the word flogged is used, but each one of these different ones points to a different thing. Here's a fancy sentence that I wrote down. The punishment was horrible, the victim being bound to a low pillar or stake and beaten, either with rods or, in the case of slaves and provincials, with scourges called scorpions, leather thongs tipped with leaden balls or sharp spikes. The severity of the infliction in Jesus' case is evident from his inability to bear his cross. That's the third level, the verberatio. I should have put more time into learning these words. But anyway, you guys get it. Third level scourge, first level scourge. Okay. And here we're going to come to our first opinion. I'm going to let you get away with whatever you want to think on this, but there's a lot going on right here. In comparing this to the other ones, and comparing this story to the other accounts in the other Gospels. For me, what happened to Jesus right here is level 1. This is level 1. Okay, so that's surprising. So everybody thought I was going to go with level 3, okay. But Jesus received, for me, the way I'm going to present it, this level 1 punishment. Many Bible scholars disagree on this, and it's not a major issue, but I'll explain it a little bit better. Many times the synoptics, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, provide an account that works well with John. They harmonize together. That's the word that we try to use. And other times there's issues. And this is a situation where we want to try to work to bring them together and make them work together. And I feel like I found this one way that I think just does it just perfectly. Now, there are many Bible teachers, if I said some of their names, like Warren Wiersbe or different people, who would disagree with you, and they'd tell you that this is level 3. But there's many other people who will tell you that this one right here is level 1. And I'll tell you why. The fact is that John is not, John doesn't sentence Jesus until chapter 19, verse 16. At that point, he is sentenced. Pilate hands him over to be crucified. We're only in verse 1. The flogging in verse 1 is a separate act from the scourging that happens after 16. So, once he receives his sentence, he is then scourged. Here's the 2 places. Mark 15:15 says, "So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released for them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified." And then in Matthew 27 it says, "Then he released for them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, delivered him to be crucified." So once Pilate sentences Jesus, then he is level 3. There's no question about that. It's in Matthew and Mark. So many Bible critics, let's just say, would call this a contradiction. Well, now is he beaten afterwards, or is he beaten right here in 1? Which one's going to be right? You're going to pick John, or you're going to pick the others? For me, it's both. It's both. He is level 1 flogged, tried to be released, doesn't work, and they continue crying, crucify him, all this, and then he's level 3 after his sentencing. So it's even worse than you're even thinking. You know, I feel as if when you read John like that, there's no contradiction. It's just worse. It's a worse situation, but
Do we have any idea what time it is?
it's like 8:30, something like that, 8:45 maybe.
In the morning?
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's after 8 for sure. That's when he first is with Pilate. Now, if you want to say it's 9:30, that's okay.
I just
10:30.
want that ballpark, because I just
It's not lunch
know
yet. It's not lunch.
It's hours though.
Yes.
It's several hours. of
Oh
just
yeah, he's been
torture.
going the whole time.
Yeah, and he's been up all night.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
This is a rough night. But really quickly, just in case we missed that, in 19:1, Pilate takes him and flogs him. That's, for me, level 1. And then when he hands him over, he delivers him over to be crucified. That's the level 3 that the other ones talk about. So I don't want that to be a distraction from the events that are going on, but I do feel like that's a pretty good one to keep in mind. I love harmonizing the Gospels. I think that's a very important thing to have, this picture in your head of, well, hold on, that guy made a good point, you know? How can I explain that? That's a pretty good one right there. And if you want to go with something else in your head, that's okay. I'll argue with you later. But that is an argued point of contradiction by many, I'd say atheists, but man, sometimes when I say atheists, I feel like everybody's like, oh, those crazy atheists, I don't know any. Like you do. You know what I'm saying? Like you do. But like Bible critics even, let's just say. So this makes all 4 gospel accounts agree with no contradictions. So back to the flogging in verse 1. Pilate takes him in this way of trying to pacify the Jewish leaders. Jesus is a troublemaker, and he's being punished like he's one. Although Pilate doesn't agree. Then his second scourging, 3, the third level, makes the death come a lot faster. One thing to keep in mind is crucifixion in these days would have taken days for a common person to have died. He, after the beating and all the things that he goes through, he only lasts a few hours. Once you've been level 3, you're not lasting for days.
Taking days just meaning they just basically would have put him on the cross, and the actual dying on the cross would have been a lot longer.
Yes.
Is that what you mean?
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense, but in a way, no, I'm not going to say that, but in a way, you think anything to speed it up. But then it's so horrific, the torture.
Mm-hmm.
So that's wrong for me to even say that or think like that.
So,
It's just all horrific.
No, it is.
You know.
It is.
so when you went over there,
Okay.
how far from where he was beaten with the
Did
third
he carry
level
the cross?
did he carry the cross?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Very good.
my topic.
That's very good. We're going to get into that. We're gonna map it out.
It's surprising me that he could even lift it.
He could.
after
Right,
such a big-
right.
Did-
Yeah.
he could.
If he got a level 3,
He gets the level 3, for sure.
And, how did, I mean, somebody that had to carry me to the, put up the cross.
And he pretty much does. Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, it's good.
Lisa
It's pretty
beats
far,
me.
though.
Yeah,
It's
she
farther than you
beats me
think.
level 1, and I ain't no way I can carry it.
It's,
You think you learn every
She's
one.
level 2, right?
For-
She's level 2 right upside the head.
For me, I think I did this before. I took it and I drew it on Google Earth, and from here to, let's say, the stop sign out at 411 is roughly how far it is. Walking down the hill, down the road, down the road. It's pretty good ways. His path is not a straight path either, but we'll
What
get
did
to
you call
that.
the path, the Delaware?
Via Dolorosa. That's exactly right. The path of the way of the cross.
Right.
Is Latin there. But no, that's a good one. That's a very good question. We'll have that all mapped out. I should be mapping it as we're going along, but we're still over here at the Praetorium and he left to go to Herod's palace. He's back. So moving on, in verse 2 and 3. That's all verse 1. It's 9:39. Anyway, okay, one verse there. But and the soldiers, they twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head and arrayed him in a purple robe. They came up to him saying, "Hail, King of the Jews," and struck him with their hands. Man, I feel like there's so much going on here. One thing we'd kind of talked about is the time here is a much different time than we understand. We live in a very air-conditioned world we have refrigerated drinks and ice and all these things. We just don't really understand the world that they're in, everything was rough, everything was rough. And so these soldiers are just put in the most unbelievable thing. If you even read like just a few hundred years ago, George Washington and like the soldiers out like what's the river he crosses? The what?
Yeah.
The Delaware. There you go. Thank you. That's good. They're crossing the Delaware. They don't have any socks. They're just in these leather boots. It's like the worst thing you've ever heard of. That's nothing on these guys. These guys are rough. And like they it's kind of like a live or die thing, and that's it. Well, he died. It's not anything like it is now. And so for me, there's this level in these soldiers of like this. I'm going to use the word masculinity, but it's not. I'm not saying it in a good way to some degree. It's this barbaric kind of. I don't want to say toxic for sure, but like it is kind of a thing that we can kind of see sometimes for me, even in 2022. Even if you're in the military, let's just say there could be times where you're working off each other's energy kind of thing, and it becomes a bad scene, and there's this bullying type of a mentality. And that's kind of what's going on here. Today's masculinity is much softer than what it used to be. Yeah. And obviously, yeah. Everybody laughed on that one. But it's a brutal and violent world back then. 500 years ago, it was far more brutal and violent than it is now. But back then, it would have been hard for us to have understood. I feel like, okay, here's a couple other ones. For me, of course, prison's a good one, but for me, the closest I can think of something is like a football locker room where you have this energy, you have this, for people who have been there, you understand that a little bit. There's this rough and rowdiness to it. It's I don't know what the right words are, but everybody understands what I'm talking about. But so,
Or hazing.
a little bit, they're feeding off each other's adrenaline is what I'm trying to get, and then there's this bullying and provoking and just vulgarity and violence in there on this primal level. I don't want to use that word, but that's where verses 2 and 3 are. There's this barracks vulgarity, and that's what they're doing here. That's what these soldiers are doing. What are you saying?
So you saying that just because you got hit and your mama drug you off the field?
Probably. That's why. But that's what verses 2 and 3 are. These soldiers, this is very bullying, mocking, just ugly. I don't know the right words. The date palm is a very common tree in Jerusalem. And first off, I will just say any guess to which tree or shrub is used here is exactly that. It's a guess to some degree. You could look in 25 different books, and every single one of them might say something different. But the one I like is the date palm. It's a very common tree there, similar to the palm tree type of thing, some of them in Florida even. But the Judean date palm tree, it's thought that the soldiers take this they twist together the long spikes. They fashion them into this mock imitation of a crown. And some of the spikes on that tree are about 12 inches long.
I have a picture Jeff shared from,
Okay.
I was gonna pass around, just of the.
Is it of a date palm?
Some of the thorns.
Yeah, no, yeah. There's a lot of thorny trees there, so it could have been a lot
I
of.
don't know, this was just something that was pointed out when he was there, saying that,
That's good.
so, but I had no idea.
Mhm.
I
No,
really-
they're
'cause, you know,
big.
when you see our thorns on little roses,
Mhm.
and this is like a toothpick of a thorn,
Yeah,
you know,
no,
so I'll pass
they're
it
long.
around. You know,
Um,
have to, like,
And you could take the branch and it has all these thorns on it, and then they just twist it around. It would have been unbelievably
I
horrible.
wouldn't, I could have stopped myself with one of those thorns.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, so they take this and they're in this mocking sense, they're putting it on him. But in another sense, man, I like 1 Peter 5:4 here. This is a good one. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the unfading crown of glory. And Jesus here is wearing his crown of glory. And man, it's just so strong for me. It's just, he is in his glory right now, the one he's been talking about this whole time. And everyone saw it as this terrible thing, but in his humiliated state, right here, this is exactly what he has to go through for us. So for that, man, it's so, there's so many things going on here at once. The intention of the soldiers is mockery, but the long thorns, it adds to the blood loss also. It adds to the pain. From this point on, Jesus is visibly bleeding. I think that's a fair thing to say. For me, he still has somewhat of his clothes on. He's covered up a little bit, but he's for sure visibly bleeding. You're not putting thorn crown on your head without getting some blood out. The purple robe, it's commonly looked at as it's a military cloak, probably like a short military cloak. They fling it around his shoulders. It also could have something to do with when he's sent to Herod. Herod dresses him up in some kind of a way to mock him. Herod would have been looked at as a not any nice words I can think of. He had he's well known, well documented outside of the Bible for what we would call an open orgy. So all of his parties are like, he's a very eccentrically crazy kind of a guy, you know. During these parties though, people would be just killed in front of people. All kinds of crazy things were happening left and right.
I had the impression that he was crazy, like killed people and just
He
like.
he beheaded John the Baptist just 3 years before this, yeah, at a party, birthday party. So he's an absolutely
Terrifying.
yes.
But wouldn't the purple also be viewed as a color of royalty?
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
In them throwing this on them, they don't realize what they're doing. None of them do. Pilate never realizes it. The Jewish leaders never realize it. They never understand until it's too late.
But to me, and this is the first time I've really thought about it, it makes me kind of really want to cry, but the crown of thorns,
Mhm.
the mockery of that.
Yes.
I don't know why I've never like really thought about what
Mhm.
that signifies and how cruel that is.
Right.
Well, it had to been folded down on his head for it to stay.
In most depictions of this,
It's
they're
just
they're
making
taking.
fun of him,
There's
you
two
know?
guys on each side of him, and they're pushing it down with like a staff. There's a lot of famous pictures of that. But yeah, no, they're definitely mocking him
It's the
openly.
mockery of it.
Yes, as if this is his royal robe. Here you go, Your Highness. You know.
King,
Um,
call him king
Yeah, no, exactly.
of the Jews.
Yeah, the king of the Jews, people who don't have a king. You know, for them, they're looking at this. This is a dominated, controlled group of people who they don't have a king. Just say you're the king of the ants. I mean, what does that mean? You know. So verse 3. There's this part of verse 3 that is so good. Our ESV says they came up to him saying, but a better translation is in the net, where it says they came up to him again and again and said, "Hail, King of the Jews," and they struck him repeatedly in the face. So in the Greek, you understand that they are coming up to him over and over. So the scene that we see is they're in a line, and they're somewhat like they would be paying homage to the king here. And, you know, kind of like where you bend the knee type of a scene, you know, and as they come up to him, each one of them cries, "Hail, King of the Jews," as they strike him in the face. This rapisma is a word that we already used once to a sharp strike or blow. I don't think they're not like punching him in the teeth, but like they are hitting him. It would be with the flat of the hand to some degree, so much more like what we would call a slap, but it is to the face. It's the exact same thing which happened to him when he was with Annas.
Like the Roman soldiers?
These are the Roman
Okay.
soldiers, yeah. And I don't want to, say anything, about it. Let's just say, though, if we're going to say Jesus is a typical Jewish man is a small man compared to a typical Roman man, He's probably like 5'6", 5'7", 130 pounds. I mean, he's not a big man, maybe 140, I don't know. He's very skinny. He went that whole month without eating, so he's a skinny man. But he's getting struck over and over, and it's quite a scene. We're in the outer colonnade, which I wrote, but some think that he's tied to this column. Historically, they put him tied to this column just because the word colonnade's in there in Mark. And if you type in Christ at the column, there's some awesome stuff with that. Christ at the column is a very famous marble sculpture, and then there's all these paintings of it, and it's this scene right here where we're at, and it'll make you cry. But anyway, so we see indirectly in this scene how the Sanhedrins charge against Jesus to Pilate that he claimed to be the king of the Jews. We see that's the charge against him. He's not up here for being the Messiah. He's not up here for working all these works on the Sabbath. He's not here for any of these type of things. He's up here for saying he's the king of the Jews. And they hope for Pilate to see Jesus as a rebel against Caesar. More in a political way, not just a religious way, because he wouldn't have cared about that. They don't stress the Messiah, more of this political king aspect. And then in verses 4 and 5, Pilate went out again, out of the praetorium. He went out again and said to them, "See, I am bringing him out to you, that you may know that I find no guilt in him." So Jesus came out of the praetorium, wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Pilate said to them, "Behold the man." So Pilate steps back out of the praetorium again to address the Jews. I kind of like the scene. He's on the bema seat. They carry him out. He doesn't even step, He's above all this. He delivers his verdict of "I found no guilt in him," and then dramatically presents Jesus. I think this scene right here is it's a strong one. They haven't seen Jesus in a while, since before his beating, and eke homo is the words that he said. Here is the man, in a presentation style. He says it out to everyone. And so as he says that, verse 5 says Jesus came out from the praetorium, and he is a sorry sight. He's swollen, he's bruised, he's beaten, he's bleeding from the thorns. It's Pilate's scheme, in my opinion, here to present Jesus to the crowd pathetically. He is beaten, he's harmless. How ridiculous to choose him over an actual criminal is the presentation, I think, here. Pilate's thinking that he's made their choice as easy as you can. Every word that Pilate says can be taken with sarcasm. Every single thing he says, he's demeaning and negative tone to everything he presents. Here is the man you find so dangerous and threatening. This is him. And he comes out, and he's got the thorns in his head, and he's got the robe on, defenseless. Can you not see how harmless and somewhat ridiculous he is a good way to look at it. He's up on this platform with Pilate, beside the bema seat of judgment, and Pilate in all of his glory, not realizing that Jesus is there in all of his. Oh man, that's good. But so he's beaten, he's bloody, he's completely humiliated and embarrassed. As Pilate mocks Jesus, he's more mocking the Jews for thinking so much of this small man. That's the scene here. It's so strong. I jotted this down. I think this is Charles Spurgeon says this, talking about John. John records the event with still deeper irony. Here indeed is the man, the Word made flesh. All the witnesses were too blind to see it at the time, but this man was displaying his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, in the very disgrace, pain, weakness, and brutalization that Pilate advanced as suitable evidence that he was a judicial irrelevance. Man, that's so strong for me. How can you get any lower than this guy? Here comes your king, the king of the Jews, and then as he walks out, obviously for me the Roman soldiers laugh. They're all laughing, they're all pointing. the whole scene, and it's still not enough. You know, just 2 verses from here, they're crucify him. It's not enough. They have to do away with him, even in the state that he's in. It's unbelievable. We'll skip all that, I think. But yeah, so we'll stop right there because I just feel like we got some other stuff that goes on the next part. So I don't have enough time for it. I got like 3 or 4 minutes. But anyway, hopefully we've set the scene up as we continue through chapter 19, because chapter 19 is just stronger and stronger and stronger. Then we're getting to the cross, and we're like, oh man, how can it get any worse? It's very strong language. For me, I think it is very important for us to understand the historical context in which these scenes take place. I can't say that enough. You know, in trying to study the Bible, so many times we have to put ourselves in the place of not just the biblical author, but his intended audience. You know, we have to try to understand the things that they're going through, the way they would understand things, as opposed to the way we understand things. And hopefully.
So you're talking about the scene and where it takes place. This is inside where they strike him with a hand. That's inside the praetorium?
Yes, that is at least not in the area where everybody else is. That's in a different area.
And by the Roman soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you think that they would want to do that publicly though, in front of the Jews?
Yes, they're supposedly they are in the Jews themselves are in this outer colonnade, and let's just say they're over in another courtyard. It's still the whole. They're not trying to mix in the same area with them. And I actually read this whole long thing, which I didn't even go into, but there's this real long thing about when they go to Herod's, and they actually go inside there, because it even says in Luke, you know, they're there vehemently trying to get him to listen, which would have disgraced them also. But anyway, or defiled them. But no, they're not witnesses to this first beating until he's presented. Is the understanding? That's good though. You would think, especially if it's just this level 1 thing.
That's what I was getting at. Is like if you want to do it in public based off level 1, 2, or 3.
Right.
I think you'd want to do it publicly. Just say this is what you get.
Yeah. One thing that we don't realize in this scene is it's all men. There's only men in this scene. You couldn't witness this as a woman in Jerusalem, in Judea, even in this time.
The thing I have a hard time wrapping my mind around is how anyone could be so cruel, no matter to this man who's really never done anything but good. And, you know, I would have a hard time being cruel to execute judgment on someone who was a horrific criminal. The things they're doing to this as a human being, you know, like. And I guess the same thing comes down to, you're gonna compare it to flipping a switch on an electric chair. Somebody has to do that job this day and time, you know, and I definitely wouldn't be the one that could do it, you know, but it has to be done. You know what I mean? A certain person.
Both Scots just said, yeah, we got that.
Well, right, exactly. But I'm saying honestly too, you know, that's horrific, but it is more humane, you know, and I think there's a need for that, and I'm not against that if everything's gone right and it's obvious. But you know what I'm saying? For them to be that, it's just hard for me to wrap my mind around the cruelty of people watching such horrific, inhumane beatings. And I know it happened all the time, so maybe they were a little more.
Yeah, to say that we're far removed, from that situation.
If we look at it through our culture,
Yes.
how we've been raised, we don't realize it. I also read that in the history of that particular time, for a man to be slapped, hit open-handed, was also a form of humiliation.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm gonna agree with that.
Yeah.
What was
It's
that part? I'm sorry,
But I'd read where the history of that particular time when a man was actually struck open-handed like a slap was another form of humiliation.
No, I agree.
You said it earlier, you referenced it earlier, talking about like the mob mentality. That's where you're heading. It's a lot easier for a group, evidently.
Yes.
To be adrenaline and all this kind of stuff.
To get
It's like
caught
to be
up
cruel.
in
Versus
He's going that far, I'm gonna go this far. He's going
versus
that
the
far.
group being good.
Yes.
It's a lot, evidently
It
it's a lot
is.
easier for that.
It is.
That's
Oh,
what was
yeah, that's a
happening.
good point. That is a
They
good
just-
point about
They just
how
feeding off each other.
they
Yep.
kind of get caught up in it a little while.
They're feeding off each other.
That's right. In a negative way. And
Yeah,
feeding
yeah,
off each other's even
exactly.
adrenaline or excitement in a negative way.
I just still, I mean.
Hit 'em
we're
again,
human
hit 'em
beings.
again.
There you go.
I
Right.
mean, you still see it in.
You still see it in some
today,
ways.
like
You know.
a couple of years ago with all the riots and everything.
Right.
It's a whole lot easier people do that than from to get together
Like,
and stand up and say, no, you're not gonna do this evil
Mhm.
thing.
But the sad part is our government says, oh, we can't prosecute them. It was a riot.
No, and for me, on a small scale, not really to that, but like I feel like in a locker room type of setting, there is some of that, you know. Hunter told me there's a lot of that in jail, you know. So
No, right?
no, but there's a lot of that in different situations, you know, where the excitement's building, there's just negative man, and that's exactly what happens here. I feel like we're so far removed from the historical setting here that we have a hard time understanding it. You know,
It is hard.
I feel like just 150 years ago, we have a hard time understanding that people would go to church, and Dorsey and I would get in an argument at church, and he says, I'm a horse thief. We go out in the street and we have a duel, and then the one who wins goes to eat lunch with everybody else, you know, and that's just a part of the day, you know. And
Is
like,
it really true that happened?
oh yeah,
They did
yeah,
shoot people like in a duel, really?
Sure.
Or is that just in cowboy movies?
that's how far removed we are that we think that that's even a myth, you know.
I
Yeah.
mean, I just can't even
Yeah.
imagine
What?
that.
Maybe I missed this.
Imagine.
It seems like we skipped level 2 there. Did they not feel that level 2 was suffice enough?
I agree. I think that level 2 is not enough. That's what I think. I mean, for me, it makes so much sense that it's the level 1, and he's like, all right, here he is. This is going to get this over with, and I'm going to be done with this, you know. But it doesn't work out to his way. But yeah, no, I don't think level 2 applies for anybody. Nobody understands that as
I
the
bet
case.
they never put a crown of thorns on any other. You know what I
Right,
mean? They were
right.
just
I would
totally.
think that was level 2.
Yeah, yeah,
Please.
that ups it. That definitely makes it worse. The whole scene is brutality.
We should really watch the,
Is this something like where
Yeah, but
they're beating him in this little area that you
Mhm.
said right there? Is it like where the whole town, oh, they're beating somebody, let's go see what it is? Is it like a
That's okay.
spectator thing?
As the day's going on, I do think there's a growing crowd, and their excitement only makes it worse to some degree. Yeah, that's a good. I mean,
So where on the little map?
we're right in this section
But
right
where
here.
what area would be the cross? You think? I mean, from there.
I think it's right here.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Across the tomb. I'm pretty sure. We'll see. I need to have that labeled already.
It's
All right,
okay, no,
it's
I'm
okay.
just
We're getting there.
Did a Mark Ford map company, didn't
I know. Well, I told it he had everything all written up, and I erased his words because you couldn't read them.
Oh, come on, man.
And so then I started labeling stuff as we went, so it wouldn't overwhelm the map a little bit. But I could have had that up there.
Lack of preparation.
But
Well, I'm screaming.
yes, that's true. We hadn't got there yet. Calm down.
Boy,
It's
that
chapter
little
20.
area of town sure is a happening place.
It is. It is a happening place.
I
Not in a
wonder
good
if
way.
They know what column or the area where.
They know the exact steps. Yeah, it's in 1913. I think we talked about it last week. If you'd have been here, but no. In 1913, it calls out the stone pavement.
Look, I was just flogged by Wes.
In Aramaic, the words are Gabbatha, and those stones are still there today. You can Google it, type in Gabbatha, and you'll see the stones. They're still there now. There's a roof over it now, where it would have been an open courtyard at that point, but it's just to protect it to some degree. Pretty much the way they do every archaeological site in Jerusalem is there was something important there. They built a church on top of it. So there's a church on top of everything.
It's kind of annoying in a way.
It is. It
But
is.
I
I
know
agree.
it probably helped preserve everything.
It did. Which, I mean, it's true. But
Okay.
very good, very good.
I didn't really want to come when I saw the topic. Nobody wants to
Yeah.
really hear about flogging.
I don't know. It's got its one side and the other side. In a
You need to
way,
hear it. We need to
in a
hear it.
way,
It's
this
part of it.
is his plan. This is exactly what he wants. 700 years before this, Isaiah writes Isaiah 53, and it is this story, and it's graphic, and it sticks out when you read Isaiah 52, 53, and 54. and they're very graphic, and you're just like, what is going to happen to this horrible person that's, I mean, and
The
then,
lamb led to the slaughter.
It is,
That
it
that
is.
verse just sticks in my head.
Um,
about it.
very graphic, very horrific. If you have time this week, read the rest of 19, or you can read the rest. I mean, the rest of the book only takes like 10 minutes probably. But you can get it down, and we can keep discussing it. I read this thing this week when I was talking about different ways of your own Bible study and reading the Bible. And this guy wrote this story about you pretend you're this man in the military, and you've been sent overseas, and the love of your life is back at home. And it's been 4 or 5 months, and you haven't heard from her, and she writes this letter to you. And it's all you have out in the battlefield is this one letter. You carry it with you. You take each word, and you study it, and you eat it, and that's your relationship to it. It means so much to you. And that's how we're supposed to study the Bible. And man, I really like that. That's a pretty good one. So,
Read about it, Phil.
yes, that's right. This is our love letter. This is God's love letter to us. So we'll keep that in mind as we go this week. We'll have a quick prayer. Does anybody have anything you want us to pray about or praise reports?
Remember Brad's family, his uncle passed away. And I haven't spoken.
Okay. Very good. I don't know if anybody else.
Jamie and Ryan,
Yes?
they're expecting again. They announced it Wednesday night, and she has so much anxiety, but she also has a lot of faith, but it's still hard to balance. So she really needs our prayers.
Definitely.
Excited for them.
One praise report from the Laniers is, I don't know if anybody else saw this, but Ansley's pretty much a celebrity now. She's been on the radio. So if you guys haven't seen that video, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. But very funny. So we'll have a prayer, then we'll dismiss, and we'll head out to our service. Dear Lord, we thank you so much for bringing us in here this morning, helping us to understand your word, helping us to understand the example that you're setting for us, what we're supposed to understand through this, and how we're supposed to live our lives based on this. We love you. We thank you so much for everything you've given us. Thank you for our church. Thank you for the opportunity this morning to worship you. Use our service this morning for your glory, and it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Every Sunday, all the way down when I'm not talking during Sunday school.
Is that what you say each time?
All the way.
I don't think she really says that.
Just like she said, she was saying, what time?